A pleasant day to each and everyone. Today we will be discussing all about Chapter 4, Lesson 3, Agrarian Reform from the Spanish Colonial Philippines to the present. Land reform. It gained great significance all over the world as it aims to achieve social justice and full human development. Issues of land reform has been persistent throughout time, demanding measures to stop social unrest. Kasi noong time na medieval era, in Europe, even in the Philippines, in the early years of Spanish colonization, noong time na yon, we can say that land is power. Kung sino yung may hawak ng mas maraming bahagi ng lupa, ay siya ang makapangyarihan. So, 3. Worst scenarios were observed during the colonial era when the Spanish colonizers introduced new land holding systems to caciques. So madalas na nagmamay-ari ng mga lupa noon ay mga mayayaman lang. So sila yung mga caciques, ang mga may-ari ng lupa, pati ang mga praile. So the introduction of torrent system created serious problems. So yun yung torrents. Ito yung panahon ng mga Amerikano na kung saan yung lupa ay nagkakaroon na ng titulo. So 5. The natural inhabitants lost their ancestral domains to colonialists. So yan yung problema ng agrarian reform noon. During the Spanish period, Filipinos already live in villages and barangays. So walang konsepto ng titulo ng lupa noon. At kung paano hatiin ang lupa, pag-survey ng lupa ay wala yan din noon. So 2. The settlements were ruled by the chieftains or datus who comprised the nobility. Despite the existence of social structure, everyone had access to the fruits of the soil. So noon lahat ay may access sa lupa. So 5. Rice was a medium of exchange as money is yet unknown. So wala pa noong konsepto ng pera na kaya barter system pa noon at palitan pa ng mga produkto noon. Next is the Spanish period 1521 to 1896. Spanish introduced concept of encomenda to the Philippines. The encomenda is a system of giving lands, royal land grants, to the Spanish conquerors that were loyal to the monarch. So as a matter of policy, encomenderos must define his encomenda from the external attack, maintain peace and order within, and support the missionaries. In turn, they were given the right to collect taxes, tribute from the indigenous natives. Doon kumikita yung mga encomenderos, yung mga tributo o tax na ibinabayad natin ng mga pananim ay binabayad natin sa mga Kastila. Doon sila kumikita o maliit na lang ang pumupunta sa Spanish government, kaya kumikita ang mga enkomendero kahit hindi nila pag-aari ang lupa ay kumikita sila. 5. Encomenderos started to abuse their powers by renting their lands to a few powerful landlords, and the natives who once freely cultivated the land became share tenants. So, yung mga magsasaka na dati nagmamay-ari ng lupa o nagbubungkal ng lupa ay nawalan na sila ng pagmamay-ari kasi kinuha na ng mga encomenderos at pinagbabayad pa sila ng buwis. Next is the Agrarian Uprising 1745 to 1746. So, taxation was not only the reasons for the revolts of the Filipinos, but agrarian unrest as well. Agrarian revolt happened between 1745 to 1746 in Batangas, Laguna, Cavite, and Bulacan, in the towns of Lian and Nasugbo in Batangas. So maraming mga magsasaka ang nawala ng ang kinkita doon sa kanilang inaani. Binabayad pa nila yung naani nila sa buwis sa mga enkomendero. Kapag hindi sila nakabayad, syempre may utang pa sila. So imagine kung gaano kahirap ang buhay ng panahong iyon. Grabbing of lands by the Catholic religious orders angered the native landowners and demanded that their lands be returned based on ancestral domain. So karamihan ng mga malalaking lupa at malalaking hasyenda noong panahon na iyon ay pag-aari ng mga praile. 4. Spanish priests refused, which resulted to riots and massive looting of convents and the burning down of churches and ranches. So, magulo ang nangyari noon. Encounter was bloody and those who surrendered were pardoned. Troops were sent from Manila to Batangas to quell the disturbance, and uprising resonated in other towns of the neighboring provinces, notably Binyan, Imus, Silang, Kawit, Bacoor, San Mateo, Taguig, Parañaque, and Hagunoy. Agrarian conflicts reached the ear of King Philip VI, who appointed Oidor, a judge of the royal audiencias and chancellarias, Pedro Calderon Enriquez, who investigate the charges brought against the religious orders into ascertain validity of their titles of the lands in question. So nakarating sa king ng Spain ang nangyari at gusto niyang maayos para hindi maulit yung agrarian uprising para nga hindi na magkagulo. So the friars were ordered to submit their titles to a secular judge but refused to comply, claiming ecclesiastical exemption. So as a result, the government general disposed the friars of the lands said to have been illegally occupied by them and which they continue holding without legitimate titles, restoring lands to the crown. Case appealed by the friars to the Royal Audiencia of Manila, but it upheld the first decision. Further appealed to the Council of Indies in Spain, and again the decision was confirmed. Subsequently, the friars won their case and retained the disputed lands. Ownership of the lands remained intact even after the end of the Spanish regime. The First Philippine Republic. When Emilio Aguinaldo came to the power in 1899, the Malolos Constitution, which they crafted, intended to confiscate the so-called friar lands and other large estates. So di siya na materialize kasi mga sandali lang sinakop na tayo ng mga Amerikano. However, the First Philippine Republic was short-lived so that the plans to confiscate was never materialized. American period 1898 to 1935. Some noteworthy regulations enacted during the American period. First is the Philippine Bill of 1902, set the ceilings of the hectareage of private individuals and corporations may acquire. 16 has for private individuals and 1,024 hectares for corporations. So yan lang daw dapat ang kalaki yung lupa na pwedeng ariin ng isang individual or korporasyon. Second, Land Registration Act of 1902, Act number 496 provided for a comprehensive registration of land titles under the torrent systems. So pagkakaroon na ng title ng lupa. Public Land Act of 1903 introduced the homestead system in the Philippines. And lastly, the Tenancy Act of 1933, Act number 4054 and 4113, regulated relationships between landowners and tenants of rice, 50-50 sharing, and sugar cane lands. So yung tenant, yung nagtitilt ng lupa at saka ang may-ari ng lupa ay 50-50 ang sharing nila pag rice at sugarcane. So however, the Land Registration Act of 1902 didn't completely solve the problem of land registration under the torrent systems. Landowners might not have been aware of the law and they can pay the cost of having the land surveyed and other fees required for a torrents title. Next is the Commonwealth period 1935 to 1942. President Manuel L. Quezon advocated the social justice program to arrest the increasing social unrest in Central Luzon. Significant legislation enacted during Commonwealth period. 1935 Constitution, the promotion of social justice to ensure the well-being and economic security of all people should be the concern of the state. And third is the Commonwealth Act No. 178, an amendment to Rice Tenancy Act 4045, November 13, 1936, provided for certain controls in the landlord-tenant relationships. The National Rice Corn Corporation or the NAREC 1936 established the price of rice and corn, thereby helped the poor tenants as well as consumers. Then 6 is the Commonwealth Act No. 461 or the 1937 specified reasons for the dismissal of tenants and only with the approval of the Tenancy Division of the Department of Justice. 7. Rural Program Administration, created March 2, 1939. It provides the purchase and lease of haciendas and their sale and lease to the tenants. And lastly, Commonwealth Act No. 441, enacted on June 3, 1939, created the National Settlement Administration with a capital stock of 20 million.
Good morning, everyone. I am Daisy Joy A. De Vera, the reporter. So, our next topic is the Japanese occupation. When Japan invaded the Philippines, General Douglas MacArthur declared Manila an open city on the advice of Commonwealth President Manuel L. Quezon to avoid its destruction. Luis Tarok, Juan Fileo, Castro Alejandrino, and other leaders of organized farmers held a meeting in February 1942 in Cabiao, Nueva Ecija. In that meeting, they agreed to fight the Japanese as a unified guerrilla army. Another meeting was held the following month, where representatives from Tarlac, Pampanga, and Nueva Ecija agreed to call their organization Hukbalahap, or Hukbo ng Bayan laban sa Hapon. Tarok was chosen to be the leader of the group, with Alejandrino as his right-hand man, and the members were known as Hooks. Peasants who supported them earned fixed rentals, while landowners who supported the Japanese lost their lands to peasants. But this was short-lived because it ended with the end of World War II. The problems of land tenure in the Philippines remained even after the Philippine independence in 1946. So, to address the problem, the Philippines Congress revised the tenancy law. So next is President Manuel A. Rojas. He is the President of the Philippines during 1946 to 1948. Now, if you are asking why we jumped to President Manuel Rojas and what about President Jose P. Laurel and President Sergio Osmeña, it is because President Laurel and President Osmeña served as the President of the Philippines during the Japanese occupation. So there's no land reforms being issued by the time. And Osmeña would run in the post-war presidential elections held in 1946 but lose to President Manuel Rojas. During Rojas' administration, the following laws were enacted: the Republic Act No. 34 and Republic Act No. 55. Republic Act No. 34, which established the 70-30 sharing arrangements and regulated the shared tenancy contracts. The 70% of the harvest will go to the person who shouldered expenses for planting, harvesting, and for the work animals. And for the Republic Act No. 55, which provided for a more effective safeguard against arbitrary ejectment of tenants. President Elpidio R. Quirino, the President of the Philippines during 1948 to 1953. He issued Executive Order Number 355 on October 23, 1950, replaced the National Land Settlement Development Corporation or LASEDECO that took over the responsibilities of the Agricultural Machinery Equipment Corporation and the Rice Corn Production Administration. So LASEDECO was established to accelerate and expand the peasant resettlement. However, due to limited post-war resources, the program was not successful. Next, we have President Ramon F. Magsaysay. He is the President of the Philippines during 1953 to 1957. He enacted the following laws. First is the Republic Act Number 1160 of 1954, which abolished the LASEDECO and established the National Resettlement and Rehabilitation Administration or NARA to resettle dissidents and landless farmers. It was particularly aimed at rebel returnees, providing home lots and farmlands in Palawan and Mindanao. Republic Act 1199 or Agricultural Tenancy Act of 1954, which governed the relationship between landowners and tenant farmers by organizing shared tenancy and leasehold system. It also created the Court of Agrarian Relations. Next is the Republic Act Number 1400 or Land Reform Act of 1955, which created the Land Tenure Administration or LTA that was responsible for the acquisition and distribution of large tenanted rice and corn lands over 200 hectares for individuals and 600 hectares for corporations. Republic Act Number 821 or Creation of Agricultural Credit Cooperative Financing Administration, which provided loans to small farmers and share tenants with interest rates of as low as 6 to 8%. Next to President Magsaysay is President Carlos P. Garcia in 1957 to 1961. President Carlos P. Garcia succeeded the presidency after the death of the President Ramon Magsaysay and continued his program. So there was no legislation passed in his term, but he continued to implement the land reform programs of President Magsaysay. President Diosdado P. Macapagal, the Philippine President from 1961 to 1965. He is considered the father of agrarian reform. He enacted the Republic Act Number 3844 of August 8, 1963, or Agricultural Land Reform Code. And this was considered to be the most comprehensive piece of agrarian reform legislation ever enacted in the country, because this act abolished shared tenancy, institutionalized leasehold, set retention limit at 75 hectares, invested rights of preemption and redemption of tenant farmers, provided for an administrative machinery for implementation, institutionalized a judicial system of agrarian cases, incorporated extension, marketing, and supervised credit system of services of farmer beneficiaries. So, what happened to the implementation of this act? The Landed Congress did not provide effort to come up with a separate bill to provide funding for its implementation. However, this act was piloted in the provinces of Pangasinan, Bulacan, Nueva Ecija, Pampanga, Tarlac, Occidental Mindoro, Camarines Sur, and Misamis Oriental. Next, we have President Ferdinand E. Marcos, the Philippine President from 1965 to 1986. The Philippines' new society, or Kilusang Bagong Lipunan, was ushered in by the Proclamation of Martial Law, or Proclamation Number 1081 on September 21, 1972. During this time, the Agrarian Reform Program was put into law and the Land Reform Program was implemented. President Marcos decreed the following. First, Republic Act number 6389 or Code of Agrarian Reform, and Republic Act number 6390 of 1971 that created the Department of Agrarian Reform and the Agrarian Reform Special Account Fund and expanded the scope of agrarian reform. Second, Presidential Decree Number 2, September 26, 1972, declared the country under Land Reform Program and activated the Agrarian Reform Coordinating Council. All government agencies were ordered to fully cooperate and assist the Department of Agrarian Reform, or DAR. So the third one is Presidential Decree Number 27 on October 21, 1972, restricted the land reform scope to tenanted rice and corn lands and set the retention limit at 7 hectares. So the Presidential Decree Number 27 became the heart of the Marcos reform. His agrarian reform program was designed to uplift the farmers from poverty and ignorance, and to make them useful, dignified, responsible, and progressive partners in nation building. His agrarian reform program was a package of service extended to farmers in the form of credit support, infrastructure, farm extension, land assistance, electrification, and development of rural institutions. So this is where my topic ends, and up next is President Corazon C. Aquino, which will be reported by the next reporter. So I hope you learn and understand my lesson. That's all. Thank you.
President Corazon C. Aquino, 1986-1992. The Philippine Constitution, Article 2, Section 21. The state shall promote comprehensive rural development and agrarian reform. With this President, Cory signed into law the following. First, Executive Order Number 228, July 16, 1987, declaring the full land ownership to qualified farmers, beneficiaries covered by the Presidential Decree Number 27, determining the value of remaining unvalued rice and corn lands, subject of Presidential Decree Number 27, and providing for the manner of payment by the farmer beneficiary and mode compensation to the landowner. So, number 2, Executive Order Number 229, July 22, 1987, providing mechanisms for the implementation of the Comprehensive Agrarian Reform Program. So, third, Proclamation Number 131, July 22, 1987, instituting a Comprehensive Agrarian Reform Program. Number 4, Executive Order Number 129A, July 26, 1987, modifying Order Number 129, reorganizing and strengthening the Department of Agrarian Reform and for other purposes. Next is Republic Act Number 6657, June 10, 1988. An act instituting a comprehensive agrarian reform to promote social justice and industrialization, providing the mechanism for its implementation and for other purpose. Next one is Executive Order Number 405, June 14, 1990. Vesting in the Land Bank of the Philippines primary responsibility to determine the land valuation and compensation for all lands covered under the Republic Act Number 6657, known as the Comprehensive Agrarian Reform Law of 1988. Next one is Executive Order number 407, June 14, 1990, accelerating the acquisition and distribution of agricultural lands, pasture lands, fish ponds, agroforestry, and other lands of the public domain suitable for agriculture. Next is President Fidel B. Ramos, 1992-1998. He enacted the laws that would promote a more meaningful agrarian reform program. These laws include: first is Republic Act number 7881 of 1995, provision of RA 6657, an act amending certain provisions of Republic Act number 6657, entitled an act instituting a comprehensive agrarian reform program to promote social justice and industrialization, providing the mechanism for its implementation and for other purposes. Next is Republic Act number 7905 of 1995, an act to strengthen the implementation of the Comprehensive Agrarian Reform Program for other purposes, and which was approved on February 23, 1995, required, among others, establishment of at least one ARC per legislative district and 5 years or by year 2000. Next is Executive Order number 363 of 1997, prescribing the guidelines for the protection of areas non-negotiable for conversion and monitoring compliance with Section 20 of the Local Government Code. Uh, Next is Republic Act number 8435 of 1997, or the Agriculture of the Fisheries Modernization Act of 1997, simply known as AFMA, was enacted on December 22, 1997. It is a policy instrument defining measures to modernize Philippine agriculture for the country to complete global market. Next one is Republic Act number 8532 of 1998, an act strengthening further comprehensive agrarian reform program, or CARP, by providing augmentation fund, therefore amending for the purpose of Section 63 of Republic Act 6657, otherwise known as CARP Law of 1988. Next one is President Joseph E. Estrada, 1998-2000. ERAP initiated the enactments of Executive Order number 151, September 1999, Farmer Trust Fund, establishing the Farmers Trust Development Program and providing institutional reforms and fund mechanisms for mobilizing long-term private sector capital for rural development. And also, he launched the mag magbalikat para sa kaunlarang agraryo or magsasaka. He also launched the Agricultura Makamasa. Next is President Gloria Macapagal Arroyo, 2001 to 2010. President Arroyo envisioned to make a countryside economically viable for Filipino family by building partnership and promoting social equity and new economic opportunities towards lasting peace and sustainable rural environment. With this, President Arroyo signed on September 27, 2004, Executive Order First is Executive Order number 379 series of 2004, amending Executive Order number 364. Amending Executive number 364 entitled Transforming the Department of Agrarian Reform into the Department of Land Reform. Next one is Memorandum Circular number 4 series of 2003 or operationalizing the development of Kapit Bisig Laban sa kahirapan agrarian reform zones. And last one is Public Act number 9700 series of 2009, Comprehensive Agrarian Reform Program extension with reforms known also as CARPER or CARPER. Republic Act 9700 is a mandatory law that extends again the deadline of distributing agricultural lands to farmers for 5 years. It also amends provisions stated in CARP. Next one is President Benigno Simeon Cojuangco Aquino III, 2010-2016. President Aquino III, together with the farmers of Catholic bishops and other land reform advocates develop a plan of action for the implementation of comprehensive agrarian reform program extension with reforms or CARPER to monitor the implementation of the CARP, especially focusing on coverage and distribution of agricultural lands. Next is movement and performance of department agrarian reform personnel. And next one is delivery of support service to the beneficiaries and budget allocation and utilization. And last president is President Rodrigo Roa Duterte, 2016 present. The issue of land reform has been persistent even up to the present time. President Rodrigo Roa Duterte, the chairman of the Presidential Agrarian Council or PARC, land tenure security in his 10-point socioeconomic agenda. And that's all. Thank you.